Next thing I'm going to show you today is probably the most requested piece I get asked about every day, and that is the water display. It's really a lot easier than it looks, and it's a whole lot of fun. And all you need is some blue acrylic craft paint, any shade of blue you want. This happens to be a shade called Sea Blue, which is pretty appropriate for what we're doing. And you need some clear silicone caulking. Now, it doesn't matter what brand you use. It doesn't have to be anything expensive, and you'll usually find a clear silicone caulking on the paint aisle of any paint or hardware store. Just stop at the paint counter of any hardware store, and they'll help you find it. And you also need a paintbrush. Again, I like the sponge brushes. And you can use a paint stirrer. You can get these for free at the paint counter of any hardware or paint store. You either use a paint stirrer, which is flat, or I'm a baker, so I sometimes use my cake knives, my offset cake spatulas. Those work well too, because you're going to be swirling the silicone caulking around just like you would frosted cake, and I'll show you that in just a few minutes. Okay, start out with a good sturdy piece of styrofoam. The thickness and the length of it depends on, of course, the size of your display at home. And here at the store, I used the water display for some new lighthouses that came out this year in the New England Village collection. So what I did is I actually took the lighthouses out of the box and I placed it around the styrofoam how I thought I was going to actually place have the display. And I marked out, I took a pencil, or I'll use a pen in this case, and kind of marked out where exactly my water's going to be. And let's pretend like your piece is right here. I've got two little pieces like I wanted to put here and here, so I'll make my water in this corner of the styrofoam. So I'll basically just draw a wavy line to be my water bed, if you will. There you go. That's about where our display will be. Now give yourself room if you want to make a little beach like I did on our display here at the store to kind of enhance the lighthouse theme going on. Be sure to give yourself enough room to leave an inch between the actual water on your display and the actual pieces, your village pieces, so that you can put some sand down. And I'll show you how to do that in a little while. Okay. What I would do is take the sculpting instrument and the freehand router to create the water. Because what you want to do is make little individual designs, little wavy designs in the styrofoam for your water. Let this heat up for a minute. Squeeze it together to make it a little smaller. Okay, here we go. It's a little bit hot, so we'll back the heat off a little. Okay, and just start where I made the marks with the pen, and just make little dimple designs. It's still a little hot. We don't want to burn the styrofoam, so you don't want to let it be too smoking hot. And just make little half-moon dimple designs to be the floor of your bay or your river, whatever you want to make. Let the instrument do the work. You don't want to force it through and break the wire. Just up and down, in or out, side to side motions, as recommended by Hotwire Foam Factory. And I'm just kind of using a freehand pattern here. It doesn't really matter, whatever you desire, but just these little half-moon scallop designs I find work the best. That's all I'm going to do for that one. Okay, and the next step in this process of building your water display is to add the paint. Now that you've got your sculpted out water area, get ready for your blue paint. Like I said, any shade of blue you want is fine. And you just start. Again, that's why these sponge brushes are good, because they really get down inside of all the crooks and nooks and crannies of the styrofoam that you created with your sculpting tool. There's a little bit of gray in my paint right here because I had some gray on this brush earlier. So just add a little more blue. A little bit muddy, but it doesn't really matter. Be sure to cover the paint evenly across your surface, your styrofoam surface. And we're just covering the surface that we scalloped out with the sculpting tool with the blue acrylic craft paint, so that it'll stick to the styrofoam and we'll get good coverage with this sponge brush. Okay. Now, ideally, before you could, if you wanted to, just leave the plain blue and leave it at that, because you can make the water display with just the blue paint. There's nothing wrong with that. The silicone just gives it a more realistic look, and you can make the little waves and the little foamy waves with the caulking. If you wanted to, you could add some glitter to make it look like the sun glistening on the water, and that would give it a nice little touch. Okay, now ideally you want to let the paint completely dry before you put the silicone caulking down. And for the purposes of our demonstration, I'm going to go ahead and do it before the paint is dry. But for better results, you want to let the paint be completely dry before you put the caulking down. I would leave it out overnight, let it dry overnight. But all you do is you take your caulking. For a water display this size, you're going to need about 3 to 4 tubes of caulking to get adequate coverage.
Whoopa.
Whoopa. Don't show that. Okay, all you do, squeeze out the caulking. The caulking comes in these squeezable tubes, which is much better than the tubes that require caulking guns, because caulking guns tend to not want to work when you need them to. This is just much easier, much more user-friendly. I find it to be. So these squeezable tubes are readily available on the market at most any hardware or paint store. Okay. You just want to spread out your caulking generously. You can see how it's going to take several tubes to get adequate coverage. And just get the most inexpensive one you can find. And the reason you want to use a silicone caulking is because it will stick to your surface much better. For our purposes here at the store, that's important because you have people that want to touch the display all day long and see how we made it. And if you use a cheaper grade of caulking, it will tend to peel after a while. So that's why the silicone works best. Okay, and there you have it. Once you've squeezed out all of your caulking, you want to take either your spatula, your paint stirrer, or any kind of spackling tool will work well too. Here's a spackling tool. That will work well too. Available at any hardware store. And you just spread the caulking out. You see why it's important for the paint to be dry? Because it'll get into the caulking. If not, we're just a little bit rushed here today, so I'm doing this over a wet paint surface, but work quickly and just swirl it around. Make it look realistic like water. Just the imagination is limitless. If you want to make waves, white caps. Now, a customer asked me recently, how would I spread the caulking out if I wanted to make like a frozen pond, which was a very good question. all you would do is take your instrument, whatever you're using to spread the caulking out with, and just make a perfectly smooth surface. But otherwise, you know, just make a realistic swirly water white cap. And if you want to add some glitter, this would be the time to do it. Spread it out on top while the caulking is still wet. Now, you want to make sure the caulking takes quite a while to completely dry. It can take up to about a week at a time. So you want to make sure that your caulking is completely dry before you set any of your village pieces on top of it. And because you don't want your village pieces to stick and get damaged. So give yourself plenty of time to create these displays when you're setting your pieces out for the holidays. And that's it. If you want to add a beach design to your water display like I did here in the store, all you do is take some craft glue. Any kind of white craft glue is just fine, or if you want to use just white caulking, that would be fine too. Don't use school glue because that's not strong enough. The bond won't tend to be strong enough. But any type of craft glue is fine. Hotwire Foam Factory has glues and adhesives available as well. So take the glue, you know, pour out a little bit of glue just like I did with the paint earlier, and take your sponge brush and brush the surface where you want to create a little beach. Like, remember I said to leave an inch between your water display and where you're going to actually set out your pieces, and that's where you would spread some glue out. And then you take some decorative sand that you can get again at any craft store, and just start spreading out your sand. This is how I did it on the display here at the store. And it'll stick to the glue that you put down. And again, give it plenty of time to bond and to set up. Just spread the sand a little at a time so that it doesn't get everywhere. This is where you're going to have to be patient. Just like that. And you can add some little decorative shells or pebbles or rocks to make a river. I made a river display one time where the caulking was actually going over the pebbles, so it looked like water rushing over a brook.